days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Let's talk about the offensive line and what the depth chart looks like now that we've made it through free agency, we've made it through the draft, and now we've got some players to talk about. And offensive line has been a absolutely polarizing position because since the Super Bowl, fans have been talking about the fact that this offensive line needs to get better. Some even saying they need to draft an offensive lineman at every single pick. We, of course, know that was being a little over the top, but that fans definitely had their feelings. A lot of people telling me, hey, Ant, look, they gave up 40% of pressures in the Super Bowl. You know, Spencer Burford made a huge mistake down the stretch that could have cost the 49ers the game. They need to do something about the offensive line. And, of course, this was a heavy tackle draft, which meant there were going to be players the 49ers could potentially get. We've been targeting this draft since last season, knowing that this was going to be a draft with a lot of talent available. The problem was every other team knew there was going to be a lot of tackles draftable that were available early on that were really good, and the tackles went off the board. The top tackles all went off the board in the first 20 picks. Troy Fautanu was the last one left, and he went to Pittsburgh at pick 20. So then the question marks were, what do you do after that? Do you draft a guy that's maybe a little bit of a reach? Do you draft a guy that's a developmental player? Are you going to take Kingsley Suamataia at the end of the second round? Or you're going to go get Roger Rosengarten, who's very fast, one of the most athletic offensive linemen, but maybe he's not a good run blocker? Is that much better than Colton McKivitz? There's lots of questions that were going into the offensive line. And the real key for most fans was just make sure you address it. Just make sure we get better on the offensive line. And so the 49ers did address it during the draft. I'm not sure they addressed it as early as they wanted. I'm not sure they addressed it the way they wanted them to address it, but they addressed it. One of those ways was drafting in the third round Dominic Puny. You've been listening to the show for a while. You know that I've been high on Dominic Puny. The guy with position versatility who played tackle at Kansas, but he's been around for a long time, played a lot of football, and has played multiple positions. He has the ability to slide inside, and that's where most teams see him. In fact, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan said they were going to start Dominic Puny on the inside as far as his development, learning this offense. It is a transition to go from playing tackle to go to playing guard. So the 49ers addressed offensive line, and it's shaken up the offensive line a little bit. But with it comes even more question marks. They didn't address right tackle, which everyone wanted them to address. They didn't just straight address center, which everyone wanted them to address. So, where do we stand as a 49ers offensive line? People still have question marks about Colton McKivitz and Jake Brendel. People have question marks about the 49ers' depth. Are they sold on Jalen Moore or Spencer Burford? Well, that's what we're going to get into in this conversation. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening on an audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. And as a former offensive line coach, a former offensive line man, I know that the game starts in the trenches with the offense and defensive lines. I'm always excited to talk offensive line because it's going to determine how games go and how games are won. I think more people are starting to realize that now than ever before. They've seen some of the weaknesses in the Super Bowl, unable to stop Chris Jones down the stretch, and everyone wants offensive line. it's one of those things that I like to see. I like to see people paying attention to the offensive line because the trench warfare doesn't always get the respect that it deserves. But I think sometimes it can also be a little bit over criticized. Sometimes people are just a little more critical on the offensive line than they probably should be. It's difficult as an offensive lineman to win every single time. The losses are highlighted more than any other position. You have a wide receiver that gets beat and the ball gets knocked away. Everyone somewhat forgets it because he makes a big play. With offensive linemen, if they miss and they give up a sack, it hangs over them. They miss a big block in the running game, it hangs over them. The things that they do can absolutely end drives. So are they criticized? Yes. Is some of it well deserved? Yes. Is some of it overblown? Yes. So offensive linemen have a tough job. They've got to protect the most important person to a team. And the 49ers have one of the best offensive tackles in the entire league. And maybe for one of the guys who's the best ever to do it in Trent Williams. This guy is a bona fide first ballot Hall of Famer. The left tackle is not the question. Everyone knows where we sit with the best tackle in the NFL. That's a comforting thought that we're going to have him at left tackle. Now, the rest of the offensive line, it seems to be returning the same as last year, which means Aaron Banks is going to be playing left guard. And Banks is going into the last year of his contract. And at one time, he was drafted to potentially take over for Laken Tomlinson, who was in the last year of his contract. Fast forward, and now the 49ers may be doing the same thing to Banks. But I think everyone can look at Aaron Banks and see a player that has done well for the 49ers. I think it was a tale of two different seasons for Aaron Banks last season. Before injury, he was really, really good. He was playing Pro Bowl caliber football. And you're like, wow, him and Trent Williams together on that left side, not only is great as far as pass protection, but phenomenal when it comes to the run game as well. The 49ers had themselves a stud at left guard. Then all of a sudden he starts dealing with shoulder and foot issues, and you started to see that Banks was struggling. He tried to take some time off, but then the 49ers suffered injuries at other offensive line positions, and he had to come back a little bit early. So he gritted, and he forced himself to work through it, and it didn't always have the results that the 49ers were looking for. So Banks, I think, is solid as long as he can stay healthy. That's the part that's nerve-wracking for 49er fans, if he can stay healthy. Because what are the alternatives behind him? It hasn't felt like the 49ers had a solid alternative behind him. The 49ers tried a couple of different things last year. They had guys competing at guard, guys like Nick Zakelj. They brought in a guy from Jacksonville like Ben Barch. They had Il Manning that they put on their practice squad. They were looking for answers behind, and it just wasn't always working out. So the 49ers definitely had to work on depth. We're going to address depth in a minute. But Banks, I think, is solid as long as he's healthy. Center has been one of the most polarizing because a lot of people are seeing that Jake Brendel has some weaknesses in his game. There's great things to like about Jake Brendel. Number one, he's very intelligent. He understands the protections, the offensive adjustments that he needs to make. That is not a question. He does that at a pretty high level. Second of all, he's really good at getting to second level, the linebackers, and making his blocks. Dude is a crazy athlete and is able to take the angles and get there where he needs to get. He also does a pretty good job in reach blocks and the zone blocking scheme, getting where he's supposed to get. But the thing is, people are starting to realize that he struggles a little bit when it comes to maintaining blocks. He gets to the second level, he makes initial contact, he's unable to sustain those blocks. He makes a reach block, he's unable to sustain that block. The defender comes off, and sometimes if the play is taking longer to develop than it normally would, that defensive player makes the tackle. So Jake Brendel struggles a little bit when it comes to strength. And that is also an issue when it comes to pass blocking, because he just doesn't have the anchor. An anchor means when you're getting pushed back with a bull rush by a defensive lineman, you can go ahead and anchor yourself and not allow yourself to get pushed back any further. Brendel doesn't have the lead in his pants to be able to do that consistently. He's a smaller frame. The advantages you're getting out of him for being athletic as far as getting to the second level and reaching in reach blocks also makes him struggle when it comes to anchoring. And you just can't have pressure coming right up the middle at Brock Purdy. So there are areas that he's really strong. There's areas where he's not so strong. And sometimes that is hurting this football team. So Jake Brendel just started his second full season at center. Is he going to get better? I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if he can get stronger. I don't know if he can hold on to these blocks a little bit better. You always think you can get a little bit better at your technique. You can get someone in position and hold just a little bit longer, an extra half second maybe. You get there and you get your body in front, you get your hips around, and you get in the right place. You could do it just a little bit longer. If that's the case, maybe he would get better. But question marks are well-deserved because we've got to eventually get better at the position. You've got to find a player that can eventually step in for Jake Brendel and elevate the center position. I don't think Brendel is a bad player, but I also don't think he's a great player. I think he's kind of in the middle. And the 49ers need to get really, really good players to help this offensive line get even better. Well, I think they would like to improve at the center position. But right now, Jake Brendel is going to be that guy. It's tough to learn this offense mentally be able to handle protections and handle the calls you have to handle. They were hoping a young guy like Nick Zakelj, who we're going to talk about along the way, was going to be able to step in and handle that. So far, that hasn't materialized. Ben Bartch came in last year. Could he be able to do it? Well, he suffers from some of the same problems as Jake Brendel. The anchor issue. He doesn't have that lead in his pants to be able to anchor when you need to. But we have some questions about center. We're going to get into that. Starting right guard, I think right now has to be Jon Feliciano. The way he played down the stretch last season was phenomenal. And he played really good in the Super Bowl as well. He wouldn't have suffered an injury. Who knows what would have happened down the stretch? We know Spencer Burford made a mistake, and he admitted it. And you got to give credit to Spencer Burford for stepping up and owning what happened in the game. That shows that he's mature. He's able to understand that he made a mistake, and he can learn and grow from it. But Jon Feliciano played so good. And some of the areas that he's really good is being able to anchor against pass defenders and not give up space and allow Brock Purdy to be able to step up in the pocket. They brought Feliciano back, and I think that is going a long ways in illustrating that they expect him to start opposite of Aaron Banks at the guard position. I think right now going into training camp, that's how they'll have it penciled in. Right tackle, of course, is Colton McKivitz. And a lot of people are ready for Colton McKivitz to move on. A lot of people are ready to replace Colton McKivitz. Didn't work out in the draft. They weren't able to get one of those tackles. They did trade with Kansas City. Maybe they could have taken Kingsley Suamatia. Now, Kingsley wouldn't have been able to start this year. He would have been a developmental player that could potentially help the 49ers next year. They elected to go with Renardo Green, who may be able to help the team right now and still help in a position of need at nickel corner. So that was the things that they were having to deal with. Now, one thing I want to make sure I express about Colton McKivitz, 9 sacks in a season is not good to give up. But during the playoffs, he gave up no sacks. He was a lot better in the playoffs. That's good news. 9 sacks, how did we get there? Well, 3 of those sacks happened in week 1 in his first start of the season against TJ Watt. TJ Watt's pretty good, and he's the ultimate bad matchup when it comes to Colton McKivitz. So then he had 6 sacks spread among the other 16 games. That's not too bad, especially when you throw in the fact 2 more of the sacks came against the Ravens on Christmas Day. What were the 49ers suffering from in that game? They were behind. What were they doing more? Throwing the football. More opportunities. Throwing the football means more opportunities for sacks. Also, you throw in the fact that Brock Purdy admitted he was trying to make big plays down the field, probably means he held on to the football a little bit longer than he should. And that hurts his other teammates. So between those 2 games, 5 sacks, that means 4 amongst the other 15 games. It's not bad when you look at it that way. Now, I think that either Colton McKivitz needs to get a lot better, or they do need to address the tackle position. But I'm just saying, the position overall wasn't as bad as I think we remember. And unfortunately, in the Super Bowl, we remember it being terrible. And there were definitely times where the offensive line didn't look up to snuff. So what are we going to get from those backups now that we know who the starters are going to be? And I think criticism is okay. You get better from criticism. Constructive criticism is always what you need. Colton McKivitz needs to not give up 9 sacks this year. He needs to not have a game where he gives up 3. He needs to make sure he plays better on the outside. I think that's a fair assessment. Jake Brendel needs to hold blocks longer. He needs to get better, or we need to have guys that are able to step in. Well, the 49ers went ahead and addressed offensive line in a big way. Dominic Puny is going to be a guy that helps on the interior offensive line. Is he going to start in 2024? That I can't tell you. What I can tell you is everything about his film screams he's an eventual starter here in the NFL. He's got the speed and the necessary quickness to be able to mirror. He's got the anchor that we talked about to be able to stop big defensive tackles, but he has the ability to stay with those more athletic defensive tackles. He's got strong hands and he's got good bend in his knees. He is going to be a solid NFL pro. The things you were expecting when the 49ers drafted Nick Zakelj in the 6th round, that's what you're going to get from Dominic Puny, who they drafted in the 3rd. They must love Dominic Puny. They traded up from 94 to 86, 8 spots, to make sure Dominic Puny was on their football team. They see an eventual starter. Is he going to be a starter at guard? Is he going to be a starter at center? I think that's to be determined. But at the Senior Bowl, he did take snaps at both places. Well, where does he slot for the 49ers right now? Well, because he played left tackle, I think the most logical thing for Dominic Puny is to move to left guard. When you're moving inside, it's a tough transition. Normally, what offensive line coaches will do is take you from tackle to guard. And once you feel comfortable at guard, then you can tackle the beast that is center. Because not only is the position difficult to play, because now you have a arm that has to go between your legs when you have contact. You don't have both hands when you're going to hit. But you also have to worry about making sure that snap gets where it's supposed to be and not give up any ground, because you can't step backwards initially or you'll step on the quarterback if he's under center, and that will blow up the play. You also have to worry about protections, and we know 49ers don't really have young centers that handle protections, because that's a lot to learn. Alex Mack, when he came to the 49ers from Atlanta, he struggled with protections during the season. He admitted that sometimes he got it wrong. It's just tough. As Brock Purdy matures within this offense, he's going to take some of that responsibility off the center, but that's not happening right now. So I think Puny slides in at left guard after playing left tackle at Kansas. That's the easiest transition. He gets reps behind Aaron Banks right away in training camp. Will he get some looks at center? Possibly. But they have made sure that they have a ton of centers there. So Dominic Puny, that's where he's going to slide in first. I think after that, you're talking about Jared Kingston. They drafted him in the 6th round, pick 215, and it's a guy that has tackle ability. There is a chance that you see Jared Kingston during training camp playing tackle, but he's got short arms. He's only got 32 and 3/8 arms. He's definitely not got the wingspan to be able to take on edge defenders. That length is going to be a problem for him. The more likelihood is for him to move inside, guard, center, all possibilities. My guess is initially the same sort of thing. He played right tackle at USC. They slide him to right guard initially as they get him used to playing more inside and what that means as far as spacing and overall jobs responsibilities. So Kingston inside, Puny inside for the 2 draft picks. That makes the most sense. Let's talk about some guys that are on the team. Jalen Moore, of course, the 49ers drafted him in the 5th round a little while ago. He's been on this football team for a while. And John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan said during one of the draft press conferences that they like Jalen Moore and they're excited about Jalen Moore, and even stated that he could be a swing tackle. That's high praise. So that means the 49ers feel confident with Jalen Moore backing up Trent Williams. The likelihood is he's the number 1 guy there and could be the number 1 guy on the right side when the 53-man roster comes down. So swing tackle for Jalen Moore is huge. That means he's developed his game a lot under Chris Forrester over the last couple of years. That's exactly what you want to happen. Now, a lot of people, we haven't seen it from Jalen Moore consistently. I think he did step in this year in his time in and played a lot better than he had the year before, where he really struggled against Denver and he looked unprepared. So the fact that Moore is progressing nicely is a good sign for the 49ers. So Jalen Moore will be the backup left tackle during the season, and it looks like he could be the swing tackle just listening to some of the conversation. Spencer Burford was a 4th round pick a couple years ago, started his rookie season at guard and rotated with Daniel Brunskill. Last year, he fell out of favor with Chris Verster. He really took a step back. One thing I want to give is Spencer Burford the opportunity to be able to step back in and change things. Now, he talked a little bit last year about the fact in his rookie season he had put on a lot of weight because he thought he needed to have that extra weight to be able to hold up against bigger defensive tackles. He felt like after the season was over, that hurt him a little bit when it came to speed and thought, you know what, I need to lose some of that weight. It's better for me to be athletic and I can still hold up. He thought he had enough anchor. Well, that could have hurt him physically because he was not the same player from his rookie season. We expected him to take another step forward, and he took a step back. So Burford definitely is somebody they were high on, and I don't think they're ready to kind of give up on him yet, but he's got to make improvements this year. I think he steps in right away, day one, as the backup right guard behind John Feliciano. And if something happened to Feliciano, you're going to play Spencer Burford potentially at right guard. You could also put Puny over there if something happened, but I think initially that's how they go with their reps. I think Burford also has potential to play tackle. We'll see if they do that. They did it in a pinch last year. So many injuries against the Ravens that he went ahead and played right tackle, but I don't think it's something they really want to do. We'll see, though. We'll see. Maybe they see something different with Spencer Burford and they're ready to kick him out. We're going to find out, but I think Puny and Spencer Burford are the backup guards heading into training camp, with Jalen Moore being the left tackle. Now, when it comes to right tackle reps, I think it's going to be Brandon Parker who they brought in, the veteran. It's a lot like they did last year, bring a guy in late, a veteran player who's going to get those snaps at right tackle. You see what you got there, see if you can go ahead and stash him on the practice squad if you need to. But you're hoping that one of these young players is going to step up and take over that role. So Brandon Parker, been with the Raiders, big physical guy, is going to come in. I don't expect Brandon Parker to have a real chance to make this roster, but I think he's going to get some reps early when the 49ers have their backup guys in. Now, center. I know Corey Luciano is the only guy who played center in college, but I think the backup center when we get into training camp is going to be Ben Bartch, because I think that's his best opportunity to make this team. When Chris Verster talks about Ben Bartch, he talked about the fact that one of his former colleagues told him how good Bartch was as far as being able to have versatility to play guard and center. And Bartch actually can play tackle in a pinch as well. So I expect, because he's been working on it so much, and during the season last year he was a backup, I think he's been taking some center reps or working on center on the side. I think right now Ben Bartch is going to be competing for the backup center role, because you'd love your backup center to be a guy that can also play guard in a pinch or even tackle. That versatility is huge. Maybe you have Jalen Moore as your sixth offensive lineman. You're keeping Burford around that 7. You need that 8th guy to be able to play a multitude of positions. So Bartch, I think right now, will head in as the backup center as far as what I have. So Parker at right tackle, Burford right guard, Bartch at center, Puny at left guard, Jalen Moore at left tackle. I think that's how they come to training camp. Now, when it comes to the next group, it's fun. There's Corey Luciano. He was there for a year. I know they got Drake Nugent, but I got Nugent going to be the last center right now. He'll be 4th on the depth chart because Luciano was with the 49ers for a whole year. He knows what protections are. He knows what you're supposed to do, the rhythm, the timing, the huddle, everything. He's got it down pat. But Luciano, Ben Bartch, they know what they're supposed to be doing. So I think Nugent will start as the 4th guy. And I'm hoping that Nugent's going to step up and eventually beat out Corey Luciano. I want him to come in there and challenge Ben Bartch because I think he's got talent. He played on the national champion Michigan team, went 15-0. This guy knows what he's doing. So very excited about Nugent, but realistically, this is where he's going to start. He's going to start at the bottom. He's going to have to work his way up. Now, when we're looking at left tackle, Bryson Mays, who they signed out of Southern Miss, he's had experience playing every single position. He played tackle, he played guard, he played center, and I think everyone sees him as an interior offensive lineman, me included. The problem is we have so many interior offensive linemen on the 49ers that where are the reps going to be? I think that Mays is going to get the Ilm Manning role. Ilm Manning's arms, size, everything said that he should be an interior offensive lineman in the NFL, that's where he should fit. I think Bryson Mays, the same way, is going to play tackle and get tackle reps. as a third string guy and try to impress, but I think he's actually more inclined to play inside. I think he's built for playing inside, but I think he feels the Ilm Manning role as a guy who plays outside early, and the 49ers see if he's got the necessary talent while playing there to potentially move him in. So Mays, I think, will be the third left tackle. The third left guard, I think, is going to be Nick Zakelj. And Nick Zakelj, I was a huge fan of him coming out. I seen, what he could do at Fordham. I heard Kyle and John talking about what he could possibly be. I saw him as the center of the future. The fact he's hanging around Brock Purdy all the time, you're building that relationship. You want center and quarterback to have that relationship. It would have made a lot of sense. Now, he didn't play great during preseason training camp. He didn't play terrible, but it wasn't great. He just doesn't look comfortable, and he hasn't been able to translate to center, which I think they were hoping he was going to. When it comes to intelligence, through the roof. When it comes to football IQ, through the roof. When it comes to getting his body to make the necessary blocks, it hasn't been there. He also hasn't showed the anchor to consistently hold up on the interior. He's been playing a little bit light. But I know he talked about eating a lot of burgers from In-N-Out. He might want to step it up an extra burger so he has the opportunity to be able to play. But he's on notice. The 49ers drafted 2 interior offensive linemen. If ever there was a time you have to step up, it's right now. Nick Zakelj has to beat out Ben Bartch, and he has to beat out Corey Luciano and Drake Nugent. He has to battle its butt off. And if they ask him to play tackle, he's got to play tackle at a high level. Nick Zakelj is on the outside looking in right now. And I think they're really high on him. But if you don't make plays, if you don't step up, you're going to find yourself out on the open trying to find some other place to land. And I hope Nick Zakelj picks it up because he's a big guy. He's got a lot of potential. I root for these offensive linemen. I want them to do well. At right guard, we had Spencer Burford, then Jared Kingston. And then for the right tackle, the third, we have Isaac Alarcon. He's in the international program. He's taking over, for the guy we had before. So we're getting Gutierrez. So he's taking over for him. He's stepping in at right tackle. He had time with Dallas. Sorry, I butchered his name a little bit. But he's going to be stepping. He'll take those right tackle reps that were going for Gutierrez before, and now he'll go ahead and get those reps. The odds are he's going to end up as an exemption on the practice squad, but you want to have guys that get reps. So that's how it looks right now. I have, if I had to state today, and I wonder what you all think, I have, of course, Trent Williams making this football team, Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, John Feliciano, Colt McKivitz. Those are right now your day one starters, week one, unless something changes and one of these guys step up. And, hey, if they step up and they beat him out, no one's going to hate it. Jalen Moore, the fact that they talked about him being the swing tackle, and his athleticism and ability to play left and right tackle, he's done both. He's got a good opportunity. He's going to make this team. Dominic Puny's going to make this team 100%, and there is probably a chance that he pushes to get on this field. If he starts taking right guard reps, it could change things up. And you know what? When we were on live for the draft party or for the draft show, John Chapman said, "Hey, what if they move Feliciano to center in place of Brendel and they move Puny to right guard?" Never know. It could happen. There's a chance that he could get in on this starting lineup, but I think it's probably more so he helps if somebody gets hurt, and then next year he's ready to ascend and take over the way that Aaron Banks did. But Dominic Puny's played a lot of football, and he's really good. I think he's going to impress people in training camp and preseason. I'm excited for him. And then Spencer Burford. And I know a lot of people are upset with Burford. I get it. He made a mistake in the Super Bowl. It could have cost us the Super Bowl, and that's terrible because, you make that block on Chris Jones, and Brock Purdy probably finds Jawan Jennings or has time to find Brandon Ayuk in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. So criticism is well-deserved. Even Burford would tell you that. But this is a young player who showed some good football. And I think we got to give him the opportunity to step up and make some plays. And we've seen guys that struggled that are able to overcome and make plays. So I think the 49ers are still high on him. He still shows position versatility. He played right guard. He started right guard an entire season. And so he could still play right tackle some if they need him. I think those 8 guys are very likely. Then the question is, do the 49ers keep a 9th offensive lineman? If they do, my guess would be it would come down to Ben Bartch and Jared Kingston about who makes that team. You use a 6th-round pick on Kingston, Barch is a guy that we know Firster's very high on, has a lot of versatility, could be your backup center. That might be his way to make the team. I think it's going to be interesting. But the 49ers have some decisions to make at offensive line. And I want you to let me know what you thought about this video, what you think about the depth chart with offensive line. Do you think I got it right? Do you have some other ideas? I'm curious. And, I just want to hear it. I don't mind having a conversation about it. We can disagree because let's be honest, right now, we're just kind of projecting what we think Chris Foerster does and how these guys are placed. If they started to putting Dominic Puny at center right away, I would be shocked because he's mentally got to pick up the system. But I wouldn't hate it because he's one of those guys that can definitely anchor. And we need guys that are going to help anchor and not allow pressure to get onto Brock Purdy. So let me know what you think about this. Who do you think is going to make the roster? Leave it in the comment section down below. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You're listening on audio platform 49ers Cutback on Believe. This episode brought to you by Bet Online, where the game starts. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. And remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.